Welcome back to the show, and now we're getting to our Friday Night Lights review, and we're joined by a special guest once again, Trenton Morales. He's been on many past episodes and many reviews that we've done. Thanks so much for being back on, man.
Yeah, it's great. Always great to be here with you, brother. Unfortunately, brother Savon, just always missing out, man. Always missing out.
Listeners, I keep trying to preach to him. You gotta watch good content. You gotta watch good quality content, and this show it fits under that belt.
He fits under that belt, man. For 2024, Savon, I know you're listening to this right now.
He's listening,
Yeah,
yeah.
Savon, step your game up, son. It's time to go to the next level because,
For
just
sure, man.
where you're sitting at is not. It's not going to cut it.
Well, for this review, to start the overview, this show centered on the rural town of Dillon, Texas, where winning the state football championship is prized above all else. Coach Eric Taylor guides high school football team through pressure-filled seasons while dealing with struggles relating to his own family. Some of the actors for the cast included Kyle Chandler, Connie Britton, Taylor Kitsch, Zach Gilford, and Jesse Plemons. And thinking about this show, man, getting to our even before our first topic, like when I think about this show, I think about um, so many memories of it. Obviously, it's one of those shows where the episodes and the characters, especially in the first 3 seasons, like you're just attached to.
Bro, the
Growing
first
up,
episode.
first episode, literally, man. Like I think a few months ago, Netflix, it was back on Netflix, and I saw it, and it had been a while since I rewatched it. And I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna try it. And I was like, I'm hooked. If you follow me on Twitter, I've been like tweeting about it like nonstop. I just hooked to it. It just brings back that nostalgia for me. Like when you just think of the show initially, like what first comes to your head?
Yeah, man. Yeah, so whenever so um, we watched that show like when we were like early. Like my wife is like early in our marriage, right? And a good friend of ours had recommended the show to us, and like there's literally like we would like save money to buy the DVD sets. Like literally, I can
Mm,
walk into my living room right, which is right here, and like
wow,
grab the sets for you. We have the individual like for the seasons like in still in our house, and so
that's awesome.
it is cool to kind of have a physical copy of it. But we would literally like save up money just so we could go like buy the next season and then
Special.
blitz through it, right? So this is really before like Netflix was definitely still kind of the like it was the premium like king at the time, right? But streaming wasn't nearly as big as it is today, where you can just access anything pretty much at any point in time, right? And yeah, I remember, yeah, literally the first episode, like when Jason Street gets paralyzed, and you're just like, oh man, we are diving right
Right
into
into it.
this thing, man. Like, I mean, almost kind of like a Breaking Bad esque kind of dive in of like you are submerged right into the show, you
No
know,
hesitation. No hesitation.
no
Full
hesitation
throttle.
whatsoever. Like it felt like a show that, I've listened to some interviews with the cast because I know like a lot of the cast come back together as of late and have like kind of talked about like kind of recalling
Reunion.
the previous like the filming of everything. And there was obviously this piece of like they didn't know whether it would like continue on, right? But the way that first episode like was shot, produced, filmed, presented, it felt like a show that had been going on for at least 2 seasons prior to that, right? I was like, we're just like right into the middle of this, but I mean, because you get hit immediately with like the with the big high school football player who's sleeping with another girl at school. You get hit with the coach, like game week, and of course, was it Slam Sammy Mead, like his voice
Yes.
coming in, like Texas football is here. Everybody, you get submerged right into the culture
And
of
that's a
what it
voice you're
is.
going to hear every
Yes,
episode. Like
every
you
episode. Yes, every episode. And the thing is, like, because I've, obviously, I have not my own personal self not taken in Texas football like at a high school level like that, but I know people who have been there, and they're like, yeah, I mean that's just how it is. It is literally so surreal, and you bank your whole. Sometimes you kind of bank your whole entire life off of whether you win on Friday night or not.
Man, absolutely. And getting to our first topic, kind of like what makes the show memorable years later. To me, it was a different type of high school football show.
Yes.
I really highlighted the everyday lives of popular stars who so many times we get these like kind of vague descriptions of these players. This time we got like real in depth, like, hey, how are they on an every day to day basis? Texas football is king. Obviously, that was highlighted. All of that, and just like the interpersonal relationships of the coach's family and his daughter as well. I mean, there's so much in depth character analysis. So you kind of like what elements like kind of makes this show memorable even years later.
Yeah, it's a show that actually sticks to kind of what it knows best, right? I mean no shade to like other shows are trying to replicate it, but like All American, like it's All American is not about high school football, right? All American is about the lives of high schoolers that it somehow involves like football with that, right? Like football is almost a
Football
side
is
story.
barely
Yeah,
barely even
right.
touched
Yeah,
on.
it's a side story compared to this, right? But Friday Night Lights, like the central focus of this show is high school football in Texas, small town Texas, right? And then you kind of have the balance of life outside of that. So that's what kind of helps it stand on its own. And I mean, like again, just the people, the amount of like people who have had careers beyond the show. Like if you really think about it, and I'm thinking like thinking through this with you right now as I'm like talking this out loud. Like, you know, that's one of the few shows where like not just like one or two people kind of like spin off and have a pretty significant career beyond that, but at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 people have had, like, significant
Oh
movies,
yes,
TV shows, even be well beyond that, right? When we talk about Taylor Kitsch, right? I mean, he's carved he starred in True Detective season 2. He starred in the latest season of The Terminal List with Chris Pratt recently, right? You think about Zach Gilford, he's kinda carved out his own space with kind of like indie films, right? Jason Street, the guy who plays Jason Street, Scott Porter, has had some kind of like WB shows, and he's also
yeah.
like a pretty significant voice actor. Kyle Chandler, because Kyle Chandler was around long
Oh,
before he ever did Friday Night
well,
Lights, but
yeah.
like again, he's had things even beyond that. So, and then the girl who plays Tyra, her name's escaping me right now. Is it Adrienne Palaniki or something like that? But I
I
think
think
she
it
played
is.
in Agents of Shield, and I think she also played in John Wick. So she's had stuff all beyond that, and you just like, oh, like to see kind of how that cast is really, and of course we'd be remiss if we can't forget the biggest star of them all, Michael B. Jordan, right?
Hmm.
Just, I mean, they've all had significant careers beyond the TV show. Whereas
Jesse Plemons.
a lot of times, what happens is that like you may have one or two people that kind of really kind of spin off and kind of pave their own way, but
Right.
like in this show, I mean, top to bottom, everybody's had careers beyond it. So it speaks to kind of the cast itself. It also speaks to kind of the directors and the writers and everybody who's involved with it. Peter Berg is obviously really really well known at what he has done in the past. So yeah, it comes down to a lot of factors. But I think that there's three kind of biggest things would be that you built a story and you stuck to kind of what it is you're talking about. Number two, the cast and like the cast and the actors and actresses of who was portrayed just really stood out beyond that. And then just I think just the direction of the show, it just felt like it was really thought out in a way that was really intentional, and it didn't really feel like it left anything, kind of like no stone was not unturned except for like season 2, whenever the writer's strike cut it completely short.
Yeah.
So, which we'll talk about that
That
in a little bit.
Yeah, we're definitely going to touch on that. And before we move on, the show starts in '06. There's the movie Friday Night Lights comes out in '04.
Yeah.
Some people, even my co-host Savon, he's mentioned that he loves the movie Friday Night Lights. He was a little skeptical. The reason he didn't get into it, he was skeptical about how the show would be. What do you think was kind of like? Do you think Peter Berg knew that there was going to be some sentiments of like, hey, we're starting this show. A lot of people love the movie, and there may
Mhm.
be some skepticism about how is this going to dwarf into a really good show at the beginning.
Mhm. Well, I mean, even for me, like I really didn't take in Friday Night Lights, both the movie and the show, until a good bit after it had kind of like gone off the air and had been released. So, but I do remember like seeing like the movie Friday Night Lights. Oh, that's pretty cool. And then seeing the show like years later, I was like, wait a minute, why are they wearing blue uniforms? Wait, what's going on here? Right? Did they just like rip off the entire thing? Right? It just didn't at the time. Just really didn't
Compute,
understand like the
yeah,
significance of like what was going on. Right? But To your point, yeah, I think it does transition pretty well. Whereas like, and I think it's also a byproduct of the time, right? Friday Night Lights, the movie, I
Yes,
think it's focusing on a different period of time, whereas like the show itself is focused on more kind of the period in which it was released. So it felt a
absolutely.
little
That's a good
more
point.
like, it felt a little more in touch with kind of what you were watching because like, oh, I remember like these days when you had this or whatever, versus like where like, the one with Booby Miles and all that stuff, that was definitely set in a later time, decades
Oh yeah,
before them. So
definitely. And I'll get into favorite character throughout the show. I think
this is
there's
so
so
hard,
many
man.
there's
This is
so
so
many you can
hard.
pick. I've been going down to
Oh,
like the buzzer beater. I'm gonna go with Matt, man. I think he
Matt
wasn't your normal
Saracen, I
jock,
love it, dude.
and he was extremely self aware.
Hmm.
He was kind of sensitive to the typical tropes of being an athlete. I don't think he was your typical
Yeah.
quarterback when you compare him to like a JD McCoy, who's a very just
Mm.
has
God,
braggadocio and all that.
I
Can't
hate that
stand
break,
him
bro.
from
I
the
can't
first
stand it, bro.
episode. I could not stand him. I still can't even rewatching it. Who was, and I know it's a tough question. Who was kind of your overall
Oh.
favorite character?
So I actually ran through these questions last night with my wife. So as I mentioned, like my wife and I watched it together, and I think for me, I think it's going to be Saracen as well, man. I think just the overall well-rounded nature of his character. Um, I think this is what like I think we as people we find connection to the things we watch, right? We feel this semblance of like art has a way of like filling in gaps we didn't know we had, right?
Absolutely.
And like and I think Saracen in his life just like balancing like playing high school football, which again you see Saracen, you're like, bro, you should not even be playing
Oh, you should not
football,
be playing football.
period.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have that,
Like the whole
the
stand, like the whole crowd. Whenever he got to the game, they're like, "You got to be kidding me! Not this kid!
right. Yeah,
Not this
yeah,
kid!"
yeah. He just like beams his offensive lineman in the back of the head with a football. It's so funny, right? But you have like this kind of like dude who's trying to be a high school quarterback, work a job, be a caretaker for his grandmother who has dementia. You know, dad is absent serving in Iraq and then just pops up wherever he wants to. Then his dad dies. Then you have a mom who's been absent and just pops up whenever she wants to. And just like this point where he just reaches this climax of like, I'm tired of doing for everybody else. I'm gonna do for myself. And it's pretty
Love that.
hard. You feel the ripple effect on the show whenever he departs, right? But it's also like, he just doesn't want to be caught into that small town like facet of like, I'm just gonna do this, I'm gonna work at the Alamo freeze, I'm gonna do this, and this.
Yeah, stuck in a
And
rut. Kind of
right,
stuck in a
he
rut.
didn't
He
want to
didn't
be
want
stuck in a
that.
rut, right? So he just made a gamble on himself and he left. And in at the end of the day, it really changed a lot of things about that show. But you just see like the overall just like confidence he has, right? And just kind of you just ride that wave with him of like the confidence of like, oh, I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man. And all of a sudden, JD McCoy comes in, just like it starts to sink, right? And then or when Voodoo Tatum shows up, you're just like, he really cannot catch a break. Every time that he goes to ride that wave to go up, he then just sinks right back down again. But
Did you
but yeah, but
automatically think? Did you when JD kind of got in? Did you I don't know if you remember, but did you kind of automatic? I feel like most audiences kind of felt as though, hey, he's eventually gonna get replaced. He's just like
yeah,
this. Even though this kid is dislikable, he's got an arm and he's got that talent that's
hmm
probably gonna take them over.
yeah, and I think it just, I mean, it speaks to kind of again the nature of kind of like of sports in itself, right? Like people get enamored with like with what looks good, what looks pretty, what looks beautiful,
Yeah,
and like, oh yeah, like you have JD McCoy who's like father is like a gazillionaire and blah 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 blah, right? And just like just the sway with coaches and all that kind of stuff, and then obviously Kyle Chandler or Coach Taylor gets replaced, and they just
yeah.
like take his quarterback coach and put him right in there to like the to be the head man, right? So yeah, I mean, you felt it was going to happen at some point in time, and like at the end of the day, like at the expense of Saracen, you just kind of saw how it like sunk his ship, and it sucks, and I hate that for him. But
I do. I
but
do
but
too.
but to, but to put to kind of put a bow on that answer to your question, yeah, I think that there's something about Saracen that you just like you feel like you want him to win at all times, and yeah, just even the dynamic between him and Landry, like one of my favorite scenes.
Strong dynamic. Very
Yeah,
strong dynamic.
yeah, one of my favorite scenes is whenever they're throwing the football in the yard and his grandma comes out. It's like, Matthew, you need to find yourself some new friends. Like
Just brutal.
just brutal,
Brutal.
man. So and but yeah, I mean, just a great, just a really great character, and he was easy to root for because he had everything stacked against him. Which I mean, you can say that about kind of everybody. Everybody has something stacked
That's
against
what
them.
I kind of wanted to say.
Yeah.
You could almost say that about any character. And I know with you, there was probably a couple characters that almost made the cut. Was there anybody else that you were thinking of that almost made that list for favorite character that you just
Mhm.
kind of kept out?
Yeah, I mean, some. Here, I'll share my wife's answer because I think I agree with her on this. Like, hers is like Riggins, like Tim Riggins. Again, just somebody I mean, in a sense, you kind of admire and you're pulling for him to get it right, but
You want to root for
he
him.
will
He's not
never
going to do it.
get it right. Like,
Even when things are going good for him, he's going to find a way
yes,
to
he
mess it up.
finds a way to. I mean, just like even like the scene when he's driving with from school, just throwing his book bag and books out of the window. It's like, dude,
You
you
knew even
had it.
in that college classroom, he's like, this is not Riggins. Riggins is not going to be in
Yeah,
the
this
college
is not
classroom.
Riggins, right? And yeah, it's like Riggins is the guy who's drinking a beer in the middle of the day and just chilling in his house, right? I mean, that's just Riggins. And but it's like there's also kind of this again, there's just this nobility about him where it's like, oh, this guy, I think there is a genuine goodness to
Good guy
him,
in him.
but he just can't get it right. He can't line it up to where he can make it right, and even to the point, where he like sends himself to prison to protect his
Man.
brother's family. Right?
Was
It's
just
just
rewatching that episode, man. Heavy episode. Heavy episode.
oh, it's such a heavy episode, right? And but yeah, but Riggins is there. Um, Vince Howard, dude. I
Oh yeah.
mean, you gotta pull for Michael
We
B.
saw like a star brewing. A star was brewing. A star was
Yeah.
brewing
Oh,
for
for
sure.
sure. Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, just yeah, you see kind of that. Um, you see kind of that birthing and morphing of relationship between him and Coach Taylor, and just the trust that's built there to be able to do like it's like, hey, like do what's right, like do this with me. And yeah, I mean the dynamic of being a basically kind of like Saracen, right? And you can kind of say like Michael B. Jordan kind of replaced Zach Gilford when Zach Gilford's character Saracen went to Chicago to study art, right, to do art. Like Michael B. Jordan, like Vince became that next character, right? Now here he is trying to
That's a
provide for
great
his mom,
point.
yeah, trying to
That's a
provide for
great
his
point.
mom, for his little brother. Again, absent father who just pops up whenever his son starts doing really well, and again having to form this bond with Coach Taylor of like trust, that, hey, to trust that I have your best interest at heart, right? And find a way to kind of just like navigate through the trials and tribulations that you face, realizing that hey, if you get through this, there's something better on the other side for you. So, yeah, Vince is definitely up there, but we could literally. I mean, I think there's something
Keep
about
going.
every character in the show that I really, just enjoy. Even the characters I'm not really too fond of, like
Who's
um,
your least? Who's the bottom ranking one? The characters you
who's
just can't stand.
Buddy Garrity's up there, man.
Buddy,
Like,
I can't stand.
Old Buddy,
Cannot
man.
stand him.
Old Buddy. I mean, again, I think
Always
it's
finds a way to say the wrong thing.
always finds a way to say the wrong thing, and even similar to like a Tim Riggins, I think he has true like intention of heart, but he just can't get it right, and it ultimately cost him his family, cost him his marriage, and he ends up basically with nothing in the end of it all, right? Um, I'm trying to think about who else I hated. There's definitely some points where I could not stand um, I'll see who else. I'm trying to think about who else I really did not like. I mean, there were some times where I think Julie was definitely annoying.
I had to say that.
It's like, dude,
I'm so glad you said that. Julie was a
you're just like,
very annoying
you're just
character.
a teenager and you suck. You know? But again, but even there's some kind of admirable piece about like, about each character that I can really point to, and it just speaks to the nature of that show, man.
Definitely. And I'll get into kind of like what was your favorite season. I'm
Man,
gonna
this
go
is
with
so
season
hard.
one.
This is so hard.
It's tough though. It's tough though, because like I'm gonna go with season one. I think the storyline was developed in
Mhm.
almost every episode. This was a longer season, but I think it gives you that feel of like, man, with Jason Street and that happening, that storyline was just like one you can't forget,
Yeah.
obviously, and then the introduction of Smash and who he is as a player. Um, so I will go with season one, but I will say this: season three was a good season.
Yeah,
Season three
I'm
to
actually
me
looking
was a
I'm actually looking over
yeah.
those episodes of season 3 right now, but keep talking though. Yeah.
Yes, to me, season three was a good season. I think it's one that grew on me more. Um, really after the disappointment of season two, because that was I thought if
Yeah.
the writer strike hadn't happened, that could have been developed into something more. But season one to me is that top one. Season three is another one. And I think season five was a good closeout.
Yeah. Yeah.
To you, kind of, what will be your favorite season?
I think, I was thinking about this last night as well. I think 4 might be one of my favorites.
Okay,
Just because you you bring in a whole new like
whole new cast.
storyline. Yeah, you're bringing in, the adversity of the city of Dillon being split between West and East Dillon, and then Coach Taylor basically being told you're going to go here in light of the whole JD McCoy stuff, right? And and then because what it does is like it opens up a whole new cast of characters for that season, right?
Right,
You got like Luke Cafferty shows up. It's like, man, that why that white boy can play football, man. He's so good, right? But like again, Vince Howard. I'm trying to think about the big black guy who plays offensive line. What was his name? I'm looking at IMDb right now.
it was
Um,
Tinker
Dallas
or Dallas
Tinker,
Tinker.
bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, like like it just again it brings in all these characters that you now get to go on a new journey with, right? And I think it was probably the most unique challenge. Whereas I think like Taylor had to like keep keep the wolves at bay, right? While he was
yeah,
at West Dillon,
for
and
sure.
uh, and now when he goes to East Dillon, he has to kind of resurrect something that had died, right? Like like the moment when he looks at the scoreboard and he sees like state champions of whatever year. It's like
Right.
how do I get people to buy in once again to the history of this program? How do I get this community kind of get really
Like
behind
resurrected, honestly,
exactly
really
yeah,
resurrected.
resurrect this thing, right? Um, and I think the moment when he goes to the locker room and he just like eyes wide open and he looks and he's like, there's a raccoon in this thing, man. Like, just again, like he doesn't have the luxury of like booster
The
support.
perfect facilities. Yeah.
He has to raise funds for his kids to have uniforms to play football in, to get new equipment, all that kind of stuff, right? So it just really kind of speaks to like just it presents a challenge that was like because you could have stayed in that. I mean, you could have easily stayed in the vein of like, oh hey, we're just going to keep it as it is. He's going to stay here and be a coach forever. We have more championships, all that kind of stuff, right? But you chose to change it up, and I think it really impacted the season. But
Oh
then
yeah.
it is right after that, right? Which I think again, I think there is something to be said, and I think something that Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, other shows have done pretty well. Is just knowing that hey, this is coming to an end. Let's end this well, right? And I think they ended it the best way they could, where he's still got another championship. Coach Taylor was able to keep his family happy and follow his wife and pursue her dreams and passions, and he gets to still keep coaching football. So
Yeah. Definitely. And now kind of getting to Well, I mean, before we move on, though, we
Come
wanted to
on,
talk
man.
about
What you
season
got?
two. We want to talk about
Oh
season
yeah, let's
two.
do it. Let's do
We
it.
wanted
Yeah.
to talk about season two, the writer
Yeah,
strike.
man.
When you look back
Oh,
at that season and just really the pitfalls of it and the incomplete nature of it, what do you think about it, the legacy of it, and just kind of that empty feeling of how that season was kind of closed out.
yeah. So I'm actually looking over the episodes right now. Do you mind like reminding me like what was some of the big storylines in that season that kind of stood out? Do you
Well,
remember off the top of your head?
I I feel as though with that season, if I'm remembering
It,
right,
it,
that's when Smash,
oh, is that
he's
where he gets busted with steroids and all that?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah. It's you're right because I looked at that. I was like, oh man, like season one had like 22 episodes. That's a lot of
a
episodes.
lot of
And then
episodes.
but then, like every season from there had like 12 to 15, which I think is actually a pretty good sweet spot. Like
Yeah,
when you
that's a
get,
good that's a
like,
good spot.
like it was kind of like that change of the guard, right? Of like because some of those like older shows, like you think about like the other sitcoms of the world had like 20 plus episodes in every season. That's a lot of
Yeah,
episodes in one
that's a lot of
season, right?
episodes.
Um,
Now
so
we kind of now with shows it's kind of like the standard 10,
right.
with certain shows, you know what I mean?
Right,
But
and even
that was
then
a different
and
era.
even then, sometimes that 10 could really be 8 or even 6. So,
Yeah,
um, but yeah, I remember, yeah, just like the Coach Taylor balancing this, like this conviction of like, how do I keep the unity of my team and also keep my star player engaged, but also like punish him? Like, I mean, how do I do this, right?
so
And
much.
I think that I love that he made Smash accept the penalty for what he did, which is the right thing to do, right?
Absolutely.
Like to make him accept the responsibility for his actions was the right thing to do. And even like Smash's mom just like going off on him, which is always classic, right? Shout
Oh
out
yeah.
to Smash's mom. But like, yeah, it's one of those things that I remember when we watched the first time and it just ended, and it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And of course,
Yeah.
and remember, as I said in the beginning of this episode, we had to save a little money, buy season three, and then season three opens up with like Smash Tennis, and I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? And Wellington, this was the first time I ever felt the effects of the writer's strike upon my life. That
Hmm.
first writer's
Hmm.
strike.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I had I never really been plugged into TV during that point in time. So like, I know, like, like shows like Heroes, like got sunk by the writer's strike, right?
Yeah.
And other shows really got affected by it as well too. And as you see, like with like Friday Night Lights, it cut that season short. Which again, it might be for good reason. Yeah, I haven't really like dove into like hearing like the directors and the producers' thoughts and like how it really changed the trajectory of the show by being cut off like that. But maybe it was for the better that you kind of like had to like rework and figure out what happens on the other side of this. Because I think what came out of it, as you mentioned with season three, was a significant, pretty good to solid season,
I mean, it
and
was
it
really
really
good
set the
season.
tone for the rest of the series.
Yeah, definitely. And now getting into kind of the most underrated character, I think there's a lot of
Mm.
picks you can make. I'd go with Jess because I feel as though she's
Oh,
such a
okay,
strong presence in
okay,
the show.
okay.
She kind of, I mean, she had to raise her siblings alone. Her
Mm.
father kind of had to focus on the business, and I think these last few seasons, she kind of becomes a star in her own light. And
Yeah,
I really had to go deep in the vault because there's so many like top line characters that we always mention, but when you
yeah.
kind of, especially in those last few seasons, you kind of get introduced to characters that you don't know how they're going to fit. I think she fits pretty nicely into the
Mhm.
mix of this show. Who would kind of be your underrated character in the show?
Man, I mentioned him a little bit earlier, but Landry is a pretty underrated character, right?
Very,
I
very.
mean, he does get he gets a significant storyline when he kills that dude
With that
to protect
murder, that
Tyra,
was
which
such a
was
weird story.
crazy.
Talk about
But
like the weirdest storylines of the show. That one was, man, crazy storyline.
it's like, wait a minute,
It just
your
came into
dad
a murder show.
and your dad's gonna help cover
Forensic Files.
right, and your dad's gonna help cover it up for you. Like, bro,
That's wild.
we are going. Like Lord. Lord forgive us for what we've done as we set this car on fire. Like, bro, what
That
is
was
going on here?
wild.
Uh, but yeah, but Landry kind of has like this just this factor of like, where he like not only is friends with Saracen, but then becomes like the starting kicker for the football team,
That's
and he's
crazy.
Dillon, and like hits the game winning field goal to beat West Dillon, right? And I mean, just
Poetic justice.
right, and I think there's a point of it too of like just yeah, you just really, I just again felt drawn to his character. He really, was like this nerd who tried for football and shot his shot for the girl. He did everything in the show,
Did
bro,
everything.
and it played out really well. Shout out to Jesse Plemons, man. Again, another one of those characters who really, those actors who really kind of like started, got a big break here and has really found a life in of its own. Now, imagine like for me going from like Landry Clark to Todd in Breaking Bad, where he's like shooting kids in the desert. You're just like, no,
What?
what's going on here, man? But yeah, so or even dude, do you remember Battleship? Did you ever see Battleship?
I never saw Battleship.
So
Never saw
Battleship had
Battleship.
like was directed by I'm pretty sure it was directed by Peter Berg, but Taylor Kitsch starred in it, Rihanna was in it, and Jesse Plemons was in it as well too. So
That's crazy.
just an absurd movie. I mean, it's
Absurd
literally like
cast.
it is literally just the most absurd movie you can ever watch. It's literally live action Battleship. That's essentially what it is. Anyway, I'm veering off course here. But Landry is great, man. Landry's a great character. He really just brings some spark to the show where it needs it. Brings to the show where it needs it. And really, in some ways, kind of drives the story forward as it's needed as well too.
And before we get to our last topic, man, it's so the dynamic between Coach Taylor and his wife is like I think one of the
Mm,
strongest dynamics. Is I mean they really
yeah,
balance each other out. Tammy, she's
fantastic
one of
job.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah, she does a fantastic job in it. Each episode, obviously the crazy storyline, or another crazy storyline, her losing her job because of them saying that she recommended an abortion,
yeah,
which she really did. But obviously in Texas, that topic is held
yeah.
into it's a very important, serious topic. What do you kind of think about Coach Taylor and Tammy's just dynamic and just how they balance each other out for all 5 seasons?
Yeah, yeah. Kyle Chandler, Connie Britton, you just see it like when certain actors and actresses just have that they have that it factor
Yeah,
when they're on screen
definitely.
together, right? You think about like a Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, or even most recently with Better Call Saul, Bob Odenkirk and Rhea, whatever her last name is, right? I mean, just that there is a factor like you can recognize it really quickly where there is a dynamic and a chemistry that's working between the two characters, and Kyle and Connie had it working, right?
Oh
Like you
yes,
really believed they were married. You really believed that he coached football. You really believed that she was a mom and was a counselor. I mean, all these different things. It just really they really
it
sold it
sold you.
well.
It sold you.
Yeah, I mean, you
Definitely.
feel the tension of their strife and their arguments. Like when she's like, "Hey, we're supposed to tell you about some kind of party that we're having," and it's like, "Oh crap, I forgot to tell her all about this," right? Or
Got all
when
these
he's like,
players coming over.
right, exactly, and then of course somebody throws a rock through the window, right? Or when he's working on the HVAC unit outside, and he messes his hand up. He's like, "It's broken. Fix it." It just like I mean, just things like that, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
just. And I think it's like it wasn't even profound. It just did something. Just did the simple
very
things well.
simple.
It did the simple things well. They sold it. They made you believe, and it really helped solidify like the two central characters in that story. Like they were solidified because of how well Kyle Chandler and Connie Britton handled it.
Yeah, definitely. And getting to our last topic, it's the first 3 seasons and then the last few seasons feel like two different
Yeah,
groups. Honestly, it's really like when you get into season 4, it's like, okay, this is different. This is completely
Mhm.
different. You lose a couple characters from season 3. I don't think Tyra, Lila, they're not seen as much. Which season? I'm gonna go with seasons 1 through 3 because I'm biased towards
Totally.
that cast and that crew. That's just who I'm used to. The last few seasons I think are put together well, and we get a new zone of Coach Taylor having to resurrect a different program. But I think season 1 through 3, that those were the characters I remember the most. I have the
Yeah.
most fond memories of in terms of just like all the memorable scenes, the state championship. To
Mhm.
you, kind of which sect of seasons would you kind of take?
Just for the sake of liveliness of conversation, I'm gonna go 4 and 5
Okay, all right,
because
I like it.
because you had the complete nature of a story being told there, right? Whereas like season 2 was abruptly ended. The season 3 kind of had to like spend their first episode kind of like cleaning up what wasn't finished, right?
Yeah,
So I'll go with 4 and 5, and I think it's just, and I think for me, as you can be completely honest, I think it is the Michael B. Jordan factor of the show, of just like, yeah, like you just really, yeah, as I said in previous, like, uh, things we've done where we've mentioned him as a character, like you just really admire him as an actor, and I think you kind of saw really early on, because again, when I saw this, I think whenever I finally watched it, they had just ended the show, but obviously he had not been in Black Panther yet, right? So
yeah, you haven't seen that or
he
even
was still
Creed.
kind of on the rise,
Yeah,
to stardom, which is where he is today. So for me, it was like, I think 4 and 5 was really kind of captivated by him, by the stories like with Jess and all that stuff, and her family, all that stuff. The whole dynamic of like Coach Taylor and his family figuring out how to like live life with this. You see kind of like the arc of Jason Street's character kind of come to a close, like, and how he found redemption for his life. Same thing with Saracen. Same thing with Riggins. I mean, because I think
it's
4 and 5,
closure.
yeah, it's
It's
closure.
closure.
Yeah, season 5 is closure, right? It brings everything, just it brings it to a nice little package. Like, here you go, and there's a reason why the last. And again, this is all user review, but there's a reason why the last episode is rated 9.6 on IMDb, because people really admired how they ended this show.
They
They
stick the
ended
landing. They really
start
stick
the
the landing. Like
landing.
when you think about it,
Yes.
it's tough. A lot of shows, I'm not gonna say a lot of shows, but there are shows that they're good, but they didn't stick the landing. I think that's really
Mm,
commendable. This show was able to do that. It really did
yes.
it, and it tied everything into a nice bow. And it was like, hey, this was a perfect send off.
Yes, yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, even to get the last, clear eyes, full hearts, and of course she's like, you'll get it eventually, right?
I
But like,
love that. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
that.
yeah. But like, but dude, even just like even that phrase, how it has like transcended
Transcended a
like
lot of things.
all all of like entertainment, like TV history, right? People know when you say clear eyes, full hearts, it ends with can't lose. So, or even how like it doesn't happen as frequent as it used to, but whenever like some like a Texas job would open up, like, hey, I hear Coach Taylor's available these days. Like, you just like it's the fun of it all, right? Because it just it's a show that it hits all the boxes for you, right? There's moments of joy, sadness.
Yeah.
There's moments of like jubilation. There's moments of anger. There's moments where you're like, I love this character. There's moments where you're like, I hate this character. I mean, everything you want in the show is there
Smashes
for
a lot
you.
of those smashes a lot of those hate moments. Like I cannot stand this character, but
Almost this character.
there's good points of
That's right. That's right.
and to close it out, man. This is in terms of Mount Rushmore shows. This is on that list for me.
Hmm.
Um, The Sopranos, The Wire, Breaking Bad, Succession, Friday Night Lights. That's my five. Like, where does this fit for you in that like your top five of like of your personal favorite shows ever?
I would say it's definitely top five. I would say it's probably either 4 or 5. Um, yeah, I think that there's a piece of me. I mean, like I said, Breaking Bad really kind of hit hit a nerve for me that had not really been hit before. But I will say this: I'm rewatching Better Call Saul right now, and Better Call Saul might overtake it for me. It's
I've heard some people say that. I've heard some
the
people say Better Call Saul might
the
be
way
the.
the Better Call Saul is written. Maybe we'll do this on another podcast for another day.
Yeah,
But
we
like
should.
just the way that it's just written so well. And but yeah, but so I think for me, if I had to like say like my Mount Rushmore of shows that I can go back to, can recall episodes and moments and like knowing where I was when I watched all that kind of stuff, I think I would go. We go Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, True Detective season 1, with McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, uh, Friday Night Lights, and then just kind of like just kind of a fun show to have in the midst of all that would be something like Frasier. It just kind of hits. It
Frasier's
just does
good.
something for me that
I rewatched a lot
I
of Frasier
it
episodes.
really like it's just the absurdity of two rich
Yeah,
white dudes in Seattle. It does something for me. So
man, that's a good point. Frasier is a really good show. When Frasier's on, I tend to just stay on and watch. I'm like, I like this show.
yeah, I like this show. It's like,
Definitely.
you really just like. I mean, I think it's something that like we just don't have today, right? We just don't have that show
That's
with
kind of missed.
like
Yeah,
what
that's really
with
missed.
20-minute episodes, and you can bang it out and keep it moving, right? Yeah,
Definitely. Well, Trent, has been an absolute pleasure as always. I hope
yes, sir.
Savon just felt a little like, man, I wish I would have watched Friday Night Lights.
Yeah,
Because man, it's one of the 5 best shows
conviction, save on, man.
ever.
Come on, brother, come to the altar. Like
Comes altar.
our arms are spread out wide for you, man. We're ready to embrace you. Yeah, we'll get you a T-shirt that says Friday Night Lights on it. Everything. Come on,
Clear
brother.
eyes. Clear
Full,
eyes. Full
full
heart.
hearts
Can't
can't
wait.
lose. Right,
Well, that wraps it
right.
up for tonight. I'm your host, Winter Burns. This has been Full Scope. See you later.